Good morning on this lovely Thursday. I would like to thank you all for joining us for this part 2 of this Sargassum webinar, Managing the Threat. We are here with our lovely presenters today. A few housekeeping tips all. We do have a Q&A section at the bottom if we ask you to hold your questions, or you can type them as you feel through that chat box. And our panelists will do our best to answer them live on screen, or we may type you an answer if that suits best. This webinar is being recorded, and you will get access to the presentations and the recording if you have registered for this webinar once we have concluded. So we ask that you please make sure if you do have a question to, again, use the bottom Q&A chat box to type in your questions, and we will get to you momentarily. So hello, my name is Kay Danae Hines. I am the CEO of Just a Tad LLC. We focus on sustainability and service solutions for the tourism, hospitality, and travel sector. And I'm excited to moderate this panel discussion today. We have an amazing group of panelists who will talk to us today a bit more about the solutions on how we are managing this threat that we are talking about in Sargassum, understanding that it is a regional issue and an issue that we need all of our islands to partake in and band together to get advocacy around, policy around, solutions sharing, as well as funding mechanisms. So today we're going to focus on more of the solutions, funding mechanisms, and innovations that we're seeing in Sargassum. We're going to hear directly from hoteliers, as well as chief tourism officers and CEOs of amazing companies that will help us to find some really good, tangible ways on how to manage Sargassum and how to look to the positive way in which we can look at Sargassum as maybe becoming a commodity. So we're going to start out first with Leroy Brown. He is the general manager of Seabreeze Beach House in Barbados, who's going to talk to us about how he's managing Sargassum and the way in which he is talking about it for his guests and how they are looking at private-public partnerships to manage this threat. Leroy, thank you for being with us. I ask that your presentation is pulled up, and we look forward to your presentation. I will hand the floor over to you.
Thank you and good morning. Welcome from sunny Barbados. I'm looking out. I don't see much seaweed on the water this morning, although there was some yesterday afternoon. But this is a quick hotelier's perspective, really, of the issue and some hopefully some solutions. So we all know what Sargassum seaweed is. If you look at the second slide, so we talk about what it is, right? And we all know, if you're a hotelier, you know it's this mushy brown mass that comes across the water, sits on our beaches and decay after a couple of days and smell like rotten eggs and create all kind of havoc for our guests and for other sea bathers and persons wishing to use the beaches. We have an idea of when it comes heavily. There are some really good sites out there that give you some awareness as to when it will come across the Atlantic. Doesn't tell you exactly which beach it will affect, but it does tell you, give you an idea of when it's going to come. So with that out of the way, if you look at the next slide, we focus here a lot on, first of all, making our owners aware, sensitizing them to what needed to be done, certainly to the cost, because there's additional costs, as we all know, with managing this issue. We don't use mechanical equipment on our beach for different reasons, and therefore moving the seaweed quickly has been part of the issue. Based on guests and travel partners, we've educated our guests pretty early in this stay as to what we're doing and why we do it the way we do. Or welcome guest letter from myself or guest services team when they do their briefings talk a lot to the guests about what to expect, why we don't use the mechanical equipment, the fact that we have no control over the flow of the seaweed coming in, but the fact that we do everything in our power, working with nature and along with the sea itself, to have the seaweed removed. We're lucky where we're located based on our ocean currents and based on tides. We get a lot of the seaweed moved naturally. So the sea will come in and grab it and take it as well. So we've been very, very fortunate in that regard. And if you can pay attention to the next slide, along with managing expectations, government officials. So we've tried our best to work as closely as we can with the local government in terms of having help to move the seaweed. They themselves are inundated the East Coast and most of the south of the island get very, very large portions of seaweed coming in. So it's been difficult for them as well to get around and give us the kind of assistance that we require. We work with the local community. We get a lot of the guys in the area to come and help clean the beach. That has helped. That has gotten them involved in what's happening on the beach, and they can make a few dollars. Also, a lot of our local community use this beach as well. So therefore, it's been great for them to be involved in a lot of our cleanup effort. On the next slide, you'll see that we are a huge turtle nesting beach. A lot of turtles nest on this beach, and we have more than 20 nests we've counted on our beach at the moment. So that's one of the main reasons we don't use the heavy mechanical equipment. And it's been really, really interesting working with the local Barbados Sea Turtle Project in order to get awareness of that, to work on our lighting and all the other fun stuff to protect the turtles and when they hatch, of course, to protect them. But the seaweed, of course, poses some threat to them getting in and out of the water. So we've been able to work with them and work on making the beach as usable as possible. And this is one of the many things that we have to bear in mind, of course, based on where we're located. On the next slide, we've done a lot of cleanup, like I said, with the local community, lots of forks and rakes and shovels and wheelbarrows. We've been lucky to be able to get some of it back into the water. Like I said, we don't have, in Barbados, we don't have a big capacity for use of the seaweed, unfortunately. The National Cultural Foundation is working on that, and they do use some of it to propagate, I guess, for different reasons. But that is where we are at the moment. And that's the end of my quick presentation, I hope. In concluding, I would say that we have to continue to focus on it. We know that we're going to get seaweed every year. We know that from year to year, it's probably going to get heavier. We know that some of it is as a result of global warming and all the other things that impact us and impact our world. And I think this is a really, really great opportunity for us to focus on it and try to have a plan for it year after year. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Leroy. And I had a question for you. I understand that your organization has been able to secure funding to help with a lot of the cleanup efforts, because it's not always so easy. Can you tell us a little bit more about that in about 2 minutes or less, how that came about and what some of the solutions were in terms of meeting those requirements for getting that funding?
Well, I'm not aware of any particular funding that we've received to clean it up. We've used a lot of our own organizational money in terms of cleanup. We have had lots of input, like I said, from the local community, and it is an expensive venture. Cleaning up the seaweed, whenever we get inundated with it, we have to move guests. We do move guests to another beach as an option. So we provide the shuttle, and we work with that other partner in order to have them move there, that they can have an umbrella and a chair and at least enjoy a beach experience. But it's been expensive.
It's been an expensive ordeal. So you actually need to find more solutions for government assistance and look at different funding mechanisms. So we will actually cover that as we move forward in our presentation to some of our other presenters. And thank you so much, Leroy, for that presentation. Next, we have Ricardo Perez, who is the GM of Oyster Bay. He's going to give us his perspective from St. Martin and some of the partnerships they've been able to get and they've been able to put underway to help manage this issue of sargassum inundating the beaches in St. Martin. Ricardo, if you could load your presentation, we'd be happy to hear from you and understand some of the solutions you're finding in St. Martin.
All right.
We can hear you wonderfully. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, good morning, everybody. First of all, thanks to the CHDA for creating this forum. I think it's a common problem that we're all having in the Caribbean. So it's really nice to hear from the other presenters also, because there's always things to learn from what everybody else is doing. By the way, I put all those titles there just because those are the many organizations that that I am involved with that is actively dealing with the sargassum issue in St. Martin. So in the next slide, we're gonna start going through the whole little talking points. the Sargassum phenomenon started really in St. Martin, or from one day to the next at the beginning of 2011. We used to have just a little seagrass and normal, things that could be handled by our beach staff. And all of a sudden, one morning, it was just boom. We're wondering where this came from, how it was, and how we were going to address it, because we never seen it. We've never seen it before. I mean, I'm originally from Puerto Rico, and I remember seeing some as a kid in the early 70s, but nothing to the extent, like this. So it took everybody by surprise, and we started doing things by hand with our own staff until we couldn't deal with it anymore. We also then reached out to the government. As you guys know, St. Martin is divided in two individual countries. The Dutch side, which operates as an independent country, and the French side, which is actually a municipality of of France. And so the approaches are completely different. In St. Martin, most of the beaches and some of the ponds that are affected are unfortunately all on the east side of the island where we're located. We do have some beaches that get affected when the wind changes to not the prevailing wind. Here are prevailing winds, like most of you guys assume, is easterly winds. So we are the ones 95% of the time that are affected on the east side of the island. After Hurricane Irma, we also saw that there was not only we had the problem with the sargassum, we had the issue with the debris on the beach. And for years we have been looking at what mechanical equipment we could use to assist us in cleaning the beaches, removing the debris in the most environmentally friendly, or in the way to do the least impact. So as you can see on the picture there on the left, we have a small beach, or narrow beach. It's beautiful when it doesn't have sargassum, and we needed a piece of equipment that it didn't require another piece of equipment like a tractor, and that could actually make turns, basically on a dime. So we found it's a machine called a Sherrington 5500, which has its own cabin, air conditioner, music for the operator, and it could actually turn basically it's three-wheelers, and it turns on itself. It's also, the wheels are made in a special way, so it doesn't really compact the sand as much. And we have seen a remarkable improvement in the quality of the beaches that we use it. The challenge is the machine cannot handle the heavy loads when the bay is inundated. And then we use a combination of really big loaders that we try to keep as close to the shoreline to lessen the impacts. Then our machine comes in and cleans the tracks and makes the sand nice and fluffy. One of the things that we did from the beginning is we have been in. By the way, let me go back to the Beach Clean Foundation. This was, a multi-level collaboration between private properties, the SHTA, this is the Hotel and Trade Association on the island, which I'm a board member, Timeshare Association, government, own entities, and so and the Rotary, which did a major fundraiser during the Heineken Regatta. I mean, because the and the funds were raised to acquire the machine. The machine is now owned by the Beach Cleaning Foundation, because this equipment is not cheap. You know, getting it down here, it was close to $150,000, and it requires, you know, ongoing maintenance. For example, we did a strategic partnership with Windward Roads, which is one of the larger infrastructure companies on the island, where they help us maintain the equipment. As you know, anything that is so close to salt water, it's going to have its challenges if not maintained properly. So anyway, going back to the collaboration with the environmental group, we've been working close together with Nature Foundation, which is the local entity that looks after nature here on the island, as it says on the name. And what we have done with them, because we're also a turtle nesting, you know, location, we have done, you know, training of all the operators and our beach staff. So before any heavy equipment it's operating on a beach on a daily basis, they are aware of what they're looking for nesting, so it could be protected. They could, you know, contact the local nature foundation. As a matter of fact, we actually have an active nest that right now, so really off the regular time, and we feel that one of the reasons that nest was able to happen was because we have been cleaning the beach, and the turtle was able to actually come to shore. Whereas, you know, when the seaweed is too high, it also affects them negatively. Unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of having, you know, available labor to do a lot of the removal on by hand. Also, the volume of it's just overwhelming to be doing it by hand. One of the things that we have adopted in St. Martin, at least, you know, in our and Don Beach, where we do most of the cleaning by hours, is that if you could see on the picture that is there on the screen, we have a rocky area there at the end of the beach. So basically what we do is we accumulate, you know, the sargassum there. And the reason is when you're collecting it, you're picking up a lot of sand. So we are, you know, really against, you know, removing the sargassum, you know, from the beach, because a lot of sand goes with it. Whereas when we leave it at the end of the beach, it starts disintegrating on its own, you know, is less expensive because you're not really carrying it away. And we have found that, you know, by the time that the sargassum it's really gone, then we have a lot of sand that we could then redistribute throughout the bay, and it reduces the erosion over time. We were talking also before the session came up among the panelists that right now, you know, for example, we're in a storm mode here. So we're preparing, you know, and one of the things about it is, for example, okay, well, we decided, you know, for this 2 days that we're getting bad weather, you know, we're not cleaning any sargassum on the beach. We're going to let it, you know, nature do its course. Not only that, we're actually lowering, you know, the pile of the sargassum, that hopefully some of the, you know, some of the high seas will take it and help us reduce that issue also. So at the end of the story is basically we're managing as best as we can with trying to limit the impact in nature, and again we keep looking at what can we be done. We have looked at booms, we have looked at breakwaters, and it's an ongoing thing that we need to
Yes, it is. It is.
keep
It's
on.
something that we will continue to manage
Yeah,
throughout the region.
yeah.
So thank
I'm
you
gonna,
so much,
yeah,
Ricardo.
if you
I
could
do
run
have
just
a
a few of the
question.
slides so I can just,
Um,
the next.
yeah, you
and,
can run the slides as well, but we do have a question. They wanted to understand what was the name of the unit that you're using, where the organic matter is light. If you could just repeat that
It's
name
called the
for
Sherrington 5500.
the
And then you're gonna see it
Sherrington
in the next slide, you're gonna
5500.
see how the machine looks. So you could,
Okay.
so that's our beach on a good day. That's on a beach on a not good day. Next, please. That's a machine, the Sherrington 5500. As you can see, it's 3-wheelers. It has a hopper on the back that then you lift and you dispose of the seaweed. And it also has a really nice groomer. It makes it look like a ski slope. You get next slide, please. And that's our active, turtle nest. So thank you
And
for the
that's something
opportunity.
definitely very much to manage, to help manage the communication to guests about sargassum and about why it's being cleaned. And it's very important that we get it up enough to be specific for our turtles. Thank you so much, Leroy, for sharing some of those examples, as well as
Right.
the interesting partnership that you had with nature. I believe you said it was the Nature Conservancy?
Nature Foundation. of
Nature
Sonoma.
Foundation, and exactly assisting with some of the issues that we have in terms of funding to get some of these machines. Thank you very much, Ricardo. I appreciate that. While we're transitioning to our next presenter, who is going to be, we have the wonderful Raymond Mosiah, who's the Chief Tourism Officer of Belize, who's going to talk to us about some of the solutions that they're looking at on his island. But before we get right into his presentation, we just had a quick question for Mr. Brown from your presentation. They wanted to understand, where are you storing the sargassum when it is collected?
Sorry, I was muted. So
No,
what
we just
we
wanted to understand quickly, where are you storing the sargassum when it is collected?
So we don't have a collection for sargassum from our beach. What we have done in the past is that we've been burying it on the beach. We've been digging, holes and burying it on the beach. We had to stop that practice last year because of the turtle nest. So right now we're not having any of it collected. We were supposed to get it picked up from the National Cultural, the local government agency. However, they've been unable to get down to the beach. So we haven't been having any collected.
Okay, thank you. And so now we'll move in again to Mr. Raymond Mosiah, who's the Chief Tourism Officer for Belize, who will talk about his experiences with sargassum in Belize, the task force that they've created to tackle this problem, as well as some interesting solutions around finance mechanisms, some do's and don'ts. Raymond, please do put on your video. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for being with us to present this information.
Hi, good morning, everyone. A warm greetings from Belize. It's good to be in such a forum where we get to share ideas, thoughts, and experiences with our friends throughout the Caribbean and throughout the rest of the world. So this is my presentation. I've put my contact information in here because I am sure that you might have quite a bit of questions that, due to time constraints, we might not be able to answer. And so you will be able to reach out to me, and I will do my best in the most timely manner possible to respond to all of you. So here we go. Okay, so these are the destinations that are affected. Okay, we have sargassum in the north here, and then down south. So we have Ambergris Key here, and you will see a little thing pop up right here, over here. This is Ambergris Key. We often call it San Pedro, but San Pedro is just the town. Then we have Key Cocker, and that is a little island here. Then we go down south. We have Hopkins, that is down here. This is a mecca for the Garifuna culture. We have St. Bite down here as well. And we have Placencia, which is a popular beach destination and a year-round destination that tourists love to go to. All of these areas are tourism areas, and we have experienced sargassum to varying degrees throughout the years. So what we have done is when we experienced sargassum significantly in 2015, a multi-sectorial task force was established. This task force was a public-private sector partnership where, of course, we had the Belize Tourism Industry Association, the Belize Hotels Association, and others, along with different government departments, including, of course, the Ministry of Tourism. We have the Fisheries Department, Public Health, Department of the Environment, and quite a number of other agencies. Of course, we could not forget academia. And so we had the University of Belize, we had the National Emergency Management Organization, and quite a number of people have been on the task force since its inception. We've sought government funding. The private sector, we had to assist the private sector because of the scale of the problem. We provided some assistance, especially to municipal or to local governments, but we were not able to provide for the entire area. So what we did, we took, the hotel tax is 9%, and we gave a tax relief of 2% of that 9%, so that hotels could use then that money to do some cleanup, as the previous speakers mentioned. And also last week, they mentioned that this is not a cheap effort. This is really expensive. And so because it is so expensive, some of them wanted to bring in Sargassum equipment. And of course, we assisted with duty exemption from that. We've tried and successfully worked with different communities, volunteers, and so on. Cleanup equipment. Some of the destinations didn't have the equipment. And so, of course, we assisted with those. And we have a big project that we're going to launch. I can't tell you all the details at this moment because my Prime Minister is going to say much more about this in his independence address. And so I can't steal his thunder, but suffice to say that we are exploring a clean energy option with a project through SIDSDOC and UNIDO. Now, UNIDO is the specialized agency for the United Nations with the mandate to promote and accelerate sustainable industrial and economic development. So this is a big project where sargassum can be transformed into energy. And so the long and short of it is that instead of burying it, as we have also done, instead of looking for a solution where we have to transport it somewhere, and sometimes it's even it's unsightly. And so instead of having all of that, eventually it will be all used up. And so it will totally disappear through this energy project. Some of the things that we've done, of course, we use satellite imagery, we use drone technology, and we capture footage. As well, we use SAWS, which is through the University of South Florida, the satellite-based Sargassum watch system. So we look at the Sargassum forecast and so on. Of course, we also have the meteorology department on our Sargassum task force. So they provide us with updates every single time. Some of the do's and don'ts when this presentation will be shared. And so when you hover over this, you will see much more, but I just pulled up a few of them here. So you will find different links throughout this presentation to different areas where we can get additional information. So booms or barriers have worked with varying levels of success throughout the destination. As we said, we look for different forecasts, and we also explain to guests that yes, this is a problem. Unfortunately, it is not only Belize, but it is our entire Caribbean region that is affected, and we've been experiencing this problem. Okay, when it comes to disposal, some people have been using it for landfill, they've been burying it, and all kinds of things. And so we are trying to make sure that it is done in the most sustainable manner, and so that it doesn't affect other ecosystems and so on. Of course, it does pose a health threat, and so anybody that experiences any type of health symptoms, whether they be guests or staff, because staff interact in these destinations a lot, and so we recommend that they seek medical attention. Moving on, for the beachfront properties, we try to ask them kindly remove it as soon as possible. But this is like a child that you send to clean their room. Sometimes you clean the sargassum, and my colleagues from the Caribbean will tell you, you clean it, and the next day it blows in. You will never know that you had cleaned it, and the beach might have looked so pretty in the afternoon or in the evening, and by the morning, sometimes you see it right there. This photo that you see at the bottom here, this is Kikokro, one of our popular destinations, and you can see why. Okay. We try to advise people to stay away as best as possible for sargassum and avoid sargassum areas, and avoid swimming in those areas. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, and so like we said, we do have a bit of resources that is available, and so you can check these out. Again, when you hover on this, you will be able to get the link to this, and so you can see some information here. Here you see the meeting of the Sargassum Task Force, and one of the things that the private sector has not been so bold as to say, okay, well, we have sargassum. The messaging has been very limited, saying that it is a problem and we are addressing it. However, I just like to inform you that our marketing campaigns have heavily focused on the fact that we are a large enough destination where we do have exceptional marine as well as terrestrial experiences. So we promote what we call reef and rainforest. Packages are offered where you get some coastal or some island activity, but we do have the mainland, and there are tremendous activities to do. And I'm sure that when you see the photos that come up, I'm sure that all my fellow panelists and many of you that are tuning in, which we're so glad for, I'm sure that a lot of you will want to come to Belize for sure, because we do have an exceptional beach experience, just like our neighbors in the Caribbean. And we also have an exceptional product that is on the mainland as well. So there are many different things to do, including where you can go camping, you can go horseback riding. We have the Pine Ridge, we have this lake, we have so many things that you can do and see. Butterfly farm, iguana project, all kinds of things. You can go camping, or you can go to a jungle lodge. You can visit the natural cultures, right? The Creole culture, the Maya culture, and so on. And we have a lot of water-based activities that you can do inland as well. We have a plethora of rivers, waterfalls, and so on. So that wraps up my presentation. What I want to say is, like all destinations, we are focused because it is a very challenging task that we have in front of us, but we are, like our colleagues, we are working to find the best solutions for Sargassum. So thank you very much from the Ministry of Tourism and from Belize.
Thank you so much, Raymond, for that presentation. And thank you in terms of telling us about how you're managing expectations and just diversifying some of the offerings that some of your guests may be expecting when they come to Belize, to show them that it's not just the beaches while they're being cleaned up and we're looking at solutions, that there are other diaspora that they can be involved with as well to still enjoy the island. I do have a question for you in terms of, you mentioned tax relief or exemptions for specific equipment that helps to clean up sargassum. How do you determine which equipment is used for sargassum and should be tax-free? How do you make that determination of what is afforded that exemption and what is it?
Well, we know the destinations that have sargassum as a challenge. And so that's one of the first things. But there is actually a fiscal incentives and duty exemption program that we have that is continuous. And so throughout the year, we get requests, and we would send recommendations and endorsements up to the Ministry of Finance to get those. And so when it comes to the destinations, we basically know the players. You know, the place is relatively small. We know the players and we know the challenges that they face. And like I said, we have helped out with financial contributions to the different villages that we mentioned. And we know the degree because we have the Sargassum Task Force. And I'd like to also mention for the first time this year, and very important to mention, is that we have included representation from the local government. So San Pedro is a town, so we have the mayor of San Pedro on the task force as an observer, and we have representatives from Kikaka Village, Hopkins Village, Placencia Village, and St. Pite on the task force as well. And so with them being on the task force, they are able to say, okay, well, these players in my village are actually facing the sargassum issue. So for us, transparency is not a problem.
I enjoy that. I'm sure all of those on the webinar can appreciate that you're engaging the various stakeholders within that task force to get those varying viewpoints. Because again, we know that sargassum, while it is mainly in prohibiting some of the tourism sector, it is an island-wide concern. It is a private and public issue. It's not just for tourism. It's not just for hoteliers to deal with. The private companies on the islands that we're dealing with this do need to get involved, as well as government support. So it's really interesting to see that Belize is taking that approach and having not just, you know, key stakeholders from only the hospitality, but looking outside at some of the other sectors, as well as the community to get involved as well. So
yes,
thank you so much.
I'd like to make one additional intervention.
Of course.
I believe it was in the presentations last week. I'm not sure if it was Mr. Neil or it was Dr. Wu that mentioned that sargassum is not just a tourism issue. We have other stakeholders that also need to pull their weight. And so it is extremely important because the tourism industry is bearing the brunt of it. And understandably so, but when you look at the economic impact of tourism and visitation, whether they be domestic, regional, or international visitors, there is a tremendous multiplier effect that spreads throughout the economy. And so it is extremely important that we address the sargassum issue because besides foreign exchange earnings, it has a tremendous impact on the circular flow of money throughout the economy. So I wish all of the panelists and all our sister and brother destinations the very best in dealing with this challenging issue.
Thank you for your country's perspective. And we're going to wrap up these presentations with Dr. Shelly-Ann Cox of Blue Shell Productions. She is going to share with us a little bit more around solutions and potential opportunities to look at sargassum in a slightly different way in terms of how we manage the threat, looking at some of the advances in innovation and technology that we can utilize. I know some of our attendees have burning questions about how can we look at sargassum as a positive, what are some of the uses, what are some ways in which we're utilizing it through outside of landfilling it. So Shelly's going to take us through some of those, as well as other interesting ways in which we can look at sargassum. Shelly, Dr. Cox, I'm going to hand this over to you.
Thank you, Danae. Again, it's really good to be online and to hear the presentations from my colleagues before to see how the different countries are, grappling with this threat and, and looking towards opportunities. So really my role this morning is to, look at the bigger picture and the frame of, shifting from sargassum, the brown tide, to sargassum, the brown jewel. Opportunities, although we know that the mere the size of this problem is beyond what we can handle, and to get to a place where we even address sargassum to alleviate impacts is way far advanced in the future. But at this time, we can still explore some opportunities in development of sargassum products and services, and we have the resources available to help us do that. And these are three really good resources that outline the multiplicity of uses of sargassum, from agriculture, to cosmetics, bioplastics. Last week, I would have shown this slide as well to show some of the entrepreneurs and researchers that were interviewed in the process of writing up the uses guide and how they would have gone about using sargassum as the input to the production of products and services. So here you see what 1 ton of fresh sargassum could yield in terms of fertilizers, shoes, drink coasters, building blocks, activated carbon. And what you see here, fucoidins, is one of the extracts or polysaccharides or carbohydrates that I'm going to talk a little bit about in terms of some of the advances in the pharmaceutical industry and some preliminary research. But we can already see that there have been strides in the region in terms of, exploring valorization initiatives, and we see the multiplicity of uses here. Of course, each initiative, but we do have lots of young people and young innovators involved in trying to shift the mindsets from hazard to opportunity. But when we want to really explore products and services, we need to address potential sargassum value chains in terms of really building the business case. And, with business planning, we need first to look at, all of the steps from harvesting to distribution, sales, and marketing. What logistics might be required at each stage, what resources would be needed. For instance, in processing and packaging, there are multiple steps, even as it relates to storage, transportation, and processing. These steps may vary in terms of the logistics and even the order at which they come. So I think we need to take this value chain lens before we embark on the development of some of the products and services that we may want to explore. And then in the back of our minds too, we need to think about some of the cross-cutting activities, research, development, quality and control, especially environmental and social safeguards. I would have seen a question that would have been asked by one of the persons in the audience about, those types of leachates and so on that may be possible in storage requirements. But what is positive is that we have lots of people working on some of these cross-cutting activities, and some that I would feature this morning. We featured even more in the Sargassum Uses Guide in terms of the case studies, and more information, of course, is on the Sargassum Information Hub, should you want to keep up to date with the latest. But keeping the stages of sargassum in our minds, we would have seen my colleagues show some of the cleanup equipment that has been purchased and used successfully. But on coming up, for instance, some startups like Talasso Ocean have been developing a prototype for an electric aqua drone to be used in sargassum harvesting. And they're also looking, because there are some concerns that harvesting at sea may have environmental impacts on some of the organisms that might be in mats. So they're, of course, innovating so that this aqua drone that they're proposing will have, exclusion devices. And we've seen underwater as well as aerial drones being used in terms of estimating sargassum volumes. The team at Cernes has been leading the charge in developing a monitoring protocol using drones. Some drones have been used underwater to capture as well some of the maps. And even beyond that, some proposals have been made about how you can use video and image detection and artificial intelligence to even try to determine species, because we know it's a tedious task with researchers trying to, get the sargassum and determine the different species in a sargassum mat. So technology is playing an important role in trying to help us in terms of development and exploring opportunities. And even as it relates, examples here in the Caribbean, top left is an X-ray fluorescence spectrometer, which takes in situ arsenic measurements. So we have heard about the concern of heavy metals in sargassum and how that has been limiting some of the progress. But in Martinique, in one of their storage facilities, they are using this device to do arsenic in situ measurements so they know in terms of the leachates, how they go about managing that part of it. Sometimes they've been using this sargassum to do composting, but of course we have to be aware of the heavy metal content because we want to produce good quality products that do not cause harm to animals or humans or life. And then we have the Caranet sensors. These sensors you see are solar powered, and they take measurements of hydrogen sulfide and ammonia gases in coastal areas. Again, these have been piloted in the French Caribbean countries. I believe St. Lucia has started procurement of similar devices. And they have been quite useful in terms of when we think about the types of health impacts that our coastal residents have been experiencing. If we have these in place, then there's early warning to, alert persons that they're, the levels of hydrogen sulfide are approaching, harmful levels, and, that they should do their best to stay away from the coast until things get back to normal. And then when we speak about other parts of the value chain and processing other innovative techniques, for example, from SMO solar process, they're using this type of solar and microwave technology to produce products such as, green energy. They're also looking at, using other feedstock besides sargassum to produce biochar, for example. And then they're also using artificial intelligence to help them to determine, where to angle the equipment in order to get the best solar energy. So quite innovative things happening. Again, this is a company in the French Caribbean. And then some cutting edge research. And, before I spoke to some of the extracts and phycoidins, and they're, very innovative groups in Mexico. They have published in Marine Drugs recently about the effect of the phycoidin extracted from sargassum. And they would have used that on patients, COVID-19 patients, and the paper, has shown good results. And then in Cuba, for example, they have been using, antiviral agents extracted from sargassum against virus and other viruses, ecovirus, actually results in meningitis and the other viruses here. I'm trying to pronounce the tongue, but they result in things like hand and mouth disease and so on. So we can see this research is very promising in terms of the potential that sargassum has for opportunities in the pharmaceutical industry, for example. And just, a few more highlights about some innovators in Barbados looking at bioplastic packaging. Some of you might be aware of Oasis Lab that was producing a cosmetic line using extracts from sargassum like alginates. And then there is Rum and Sargassum. This is a startup out of the University of West Indies Cave Hill campus. Dr. Legina Henry and her colleagues and students have been working to use sargassum plus wastewater from the rum distilleries and black belly sheep manure to produce biocompressed natural gas. And you can visit their website, sargassum.com, and they're looking for investment to upscale their current operations. But you can see the vision which they have here in this render is to have, like a station where once your car has been retrofitted to take on compressed natural gas, that you can go in and fuel up there. And of course, we know how high the gas and other fuel costs are right now, and this could be a good alternative. But, and I spoke to some of the challenges that have been hindering, the development of processes and challenges of really turning the sargassum crisis into gold. We feature 5 of this in our paper published last year. The unpredictability of the supply. My fellow panelists asked me this question in our prep meeting. How do we go about investing in large-scale sargassum industries when we're not sure that the supply will be consistent over the years. And with the supply, there is variability as well too. We found some of the innovators prefer certain species over others because extracts are better for certain species. There's also, our forecast. We're still trying to validate our forecast and get better beyond a 3-month or 6-month forecast that might be needed. And then there's the issue of chemical composition. We spoke to, heavy metals, but there are also micropollutants, high levels of minerals, still need more analyses to really figure out the chemical composition. We've spoken to some of the harvesting, transport, and storage challenges already, but management and regulation, harvest access, harvest rights, there's a lack of harmonized standard integrative approach to this. And then there are inadequate institutional arrangements. It's a good example to see the Sargassum Task Force in Belize and other management committees being installed recently. But we really have to look at, the types of governance mechanisms that we're putting in place to really manage this issue. And then, of course, something that's, always resounding, there's inefficient funding and support, for procuring equipment, for cleanup costs, for doing tests for chemical composition to actually bring in a product on the market. And, mobilization of funds always is an issue. So how are we going about actually pooling resources to, find a solution that could help alleviate impacts? And then, of course, I didn't want to finish on a negative note. I wanted to leave some food for thought, very much forward thinking, may not be on the cards for the next, 5 years or so, but we've seen, lots of interest in non-fungible tokens, especially in the art world. And I've started to see some sargassum-related art in countries being produced, but maybe our creatives can think about considering the use of non-fungible tokens in terms of marketing and trading their art. We spoke a bit to blue carbon, for instance, and how can we use technologies like I call it blue blockchain, but blockchain, as a mechanism for blue carbon trading marketing, and tech startups collaborating with innovators to produce these solutions to really get efficient production of sargassum products and services in the future. So really some interesting ideas and food for thought to get us thinking beyond just cleaning up the beach, but what can we do after and as we think about viewing sargassum as a commodity. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cox, for that exciting presentation and just getting us some food for thought, as you mentioned, around how we can just relook and rethink about sargassum. A few questions before we do have to wrap up in the next 5 minutes. And this is to anyone on the panel who has had experience with this. We spoke a lot about land solutions and cleanup on the beaches, do's and don'ts. But if anyone has that experience in terms of capturing sargassum at sea, I know Dr. Cox, you mentioned this briefly in your presentation at the beginning, but any types of booms or any at-sea collection and strategies and funding for that, we'd love to hear from the panel on that. Is there anyone who can speak to this specifically? Water sargassum collection?
Sorry.
I'll start with Leroy and then follow up with you, Dr. Cox.
Sure.
Sorry, just a quick one. When I worked with the crane in Barbados, there was a boom, and there's a lot of work done on boom technology to help keep the seaweed off, and it was somewhat effective at certain times. I don't have absolute details on it, and I know it's something that they've been working to perfect for many years, but it was helpful in keeping the load of seaweed off the beach.
Dr. Cox, if you know of any interception strategies?
Yes, so I believe last webinar also shared that resource that has the list of several companies working to produce these booms, as well as some of the retrofitted harvesters that can be used. We see Mexico leading the way in the different models of the at-sea harvesters that are there, and seeing, of course, innovations in the creation of new equipment. So I can also we can post those resources when we send out the presentations so people can see the pros and cons of each, those booms that are also sensitive to environment and have, exclusion devices so turtles can get through as well, which is quite important. There's lots of emphasis on turtle conservation in the presentations this morning.
Excellent, excellent.
Yes,
Sorry,
I
Ray,
would-
you have something to add?
Yes, in regards to Mexico, a team from Belize went to Playa del Carmen to see how they are managing sargassum. And if you could allow me for 2 seconds to just share my screen, then I would like to show you a device that they are using. Okay, I know that we're running out of time. Okay, so here you can see this is Playa del Carmen, where you can see the volume of sargassum that they have. What this device is, this is a boat that uses a conveyor type system, and this drops the conveyor belt into the sea, pulls the sargassum onto the conveyor belt, and it dumps it into large crocus sacks. Mind you, this is quite expensive technology. When these sacks are full, they then load it onto this barge here, and then they transport it to sea. This is very effective, but it does, like I said, it does come at a substantial cost, and for some destinations, it might be cost prohibitive.
Raymond, also the challenge you have with that is that you need to have a perfect flat beach where you could land at. I mean, like for example, ours, we have reefs around, we have, a significant wave action that, that's why, booms have not been a solution for us either, because, the wave action that we have.
Yes.
You guys used it in Crane Beach at some point, right? You had booms at Crane Beach some years back?
Yes, but I think the wave action would have played into that as well as you described.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all. We are coming up on time. It is now 1 minute to the hour. I would like to thank our presenters for providing their solutions, for providing their experiences. We all know that sargassum is an issue that we are all dealing with. We need many hands on deck. And we need to take a regional approach for countries like Belize, who have a task force, and other innovations that we're seeing throughout the diaspora, throughout the Caribbean, of these interesting ways in utilizing sargassum as energy. Also bearing in mind that we need to manage the threat and manage also the nutrients and how we reutilize sargassum, as definitely stated by Dr. Cox, and then looking at different strategies and ways to partner with different entities that we heard from St. Martin, and managing the guest perspective and outlook, and talking to them about what to expect, what we heard from Mr. Brown. I would like to thank our panelists for all of their sound advice and all of their innovations that they've shared with us. Again, attendees, this presentation will be available for you, as well as the recording. We will have this part 1 and part 2 available. I know some of the questions spoke in terms of that we had today. We're mentioning some ideas around how do we capture sargassum at the sea, looking at different areas as to how do we track sargassum, where is that coming. That was covered in our part 1. So I encourage you to visit the CHGA website to look at that and listen in on what that webinar had. There was a lot of great larger discussions around monitoring, around forecasting, around how we can deal with this from a regional standpoint. And again, thank you so much. This is a timely topic that I know we will hear much more about. As a Caribbean nation, as Big Ocean states, we will continue to monitor the situation and provide you with the best resources possible from CHTA and from the Caribbean Alliance for Sustainable Tourism CAST. Again, thank you to our presenters. Thank you for our attendees, and we hope you have a wonderful week. It is International Coastal Cleanup Day on Saturday. We hope that you are all out on your beaches, in the mangroves, in the areas to clean up and look at how the community can get involved in just cleaning up sargassum. So again, thank you all, and I wish you a pleasant weekend and happy International Coastal Cleanup this weekend.